Hello again. I'm Carrie, of course. And again, I go by she, her. And I'm wearing a pink shirt and black pants. And I use a wheelchair. So, okay. Working together while frustrated. This was considered for the title of our service today. Why? Well, I am part of the Accessibility Task Force that officially launched here about 5-ish years ago. I became a member here at First Unitarian back in 2013 and had kind of mentioned to some friends here that it would be nice if it was, or if I was able to access more parts of the church. But however, momentum to begin making change had truly yet to begin. As a member here, I have been on the caring committee, a mentor for the coming of age program, on the nominating committee, and even helped to create an improv group. I still would love to do more things like work with youth, like maybe teach an RE class or something, but the classrooms are upstairs, so can't get to them at the moment. So the Accessibility Task Force got together eventually and started to consider and actively pursue the dream of a more physically accessible church building for all of us. There's been a temporary and quite unsteady, at times, ramp, steps to the pulpit, three floors, which only the main floor with the sanctuary is reachable by those who cannot walk up or down the steps. These are the basics, but most necessary to make the church usable by every person who we say is welcome to join us each Sunday and to participate equally in all the activities the church has to offer. However, during our project, beginning with the ramp out front, there of course has been some bumps in the road. Reconstructing an old historic building in a city is no simple task. Many people have to be involved to oversee what's going on every step of the way, no pun intended. It's been very slow, and there has been some miscommunication and even anger between some involved at certain times. I certainly will say that my frustration has been on a high level, like many others. We have so much to do around here, and we have been halted several times by a simple ramp. It's almost exhausting for me to think about. I have spent my whole life waiting for ramps to be built, elevators to be installed, sidewalks to be repaired. The list goes on. I visited my community college last year to see a professor and noticed that they had done all these repairs, or made the college more accessible that I went to 20 years ago, but didn't help me now. So, it helped me now, but when I went there to visit, but didn't help me back then. So that's a good point. So this past summer, again, as frustrations increased about the ramp, I was in need of pastoral care because of a few personal matters, so I reached out to Abby. Even though a lot of the frustrations were aimed at her for not speaking up enough about accessibility and disability issues within our congregation and beyond, and I knew that, I approached her with what I was dealing with, and I also was very honest about my feelings regarding the church accessibility and status right now. I think it's best to keep communication open about these matters, or they will just sit and not get resolved. So this is why we are speaking about this today. I know for sure that she and this congregation care deeply about this place, and I'm hopeful that we will continue the work to move forward as long as we are all in this together. Thank you.
Hello. While I get my papers organized here, my name is Lee. I am a 33-year-old white male. Sorry. I'm very close to so I guess we're doing this without notes, so bear with me. Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm Liam, a 33-year-old male. Thank you, Henry. I have medium-length brown hair, and I go by he, him. I wanted to talk about how change happens on a societal level and on an organizational level and on a ramp level. First, I was thinking about advocacy, and kind of the role of an advocate, of an activist. I think this starts with internally feeling that the world should be different than it is. Sort of a feeling of internal pride, that recognizing that that you're treated differently as a person, and you deserve different. You deserve equity more than equality. We can get into that afterwards if you want to talk more about that. But on the other side, there's sort of institutional gatekeepers. Not necessarily in a bad way. I think gatekeepers are important. To any organization. Like the church is, top down. Just in the way that there's a board and, there are people in charge of upkeep and everything. And, I think about things in terms of scarcity and priorities of the church, and that's very important. But I think they meet the advocates on maybe the most important level, which is community, which is collective empathy, and kind of realizing that that we should all have pride together. We should all hold that same belief in equity. I think that's the only place that change actually happens, is directing the money of the organization or whatever resources, and realigning that into the priorities of the members together. So a quick quote here. Pride is not an essential thing. Without pride, disabled people are much more likely to accept unquestionably the daily material conditions of ableism, unemployment, poverty, segregation, substandard education, years spent locked in a nursing home, violence perpetuated by caregivers, lack of access. Without pride, individual and collective resistance to oppression becomes nearly impossible. But disability pride is no easy thing in terms thing to come by. Disability has been soaked in shame, dressed in silence, and rooted in isolation. That's by the writer Eli Clare. I have a ton more to get to, but I think I might leave it on the note. I'm just saying that that it's important that we sort of collectively are meeting each other in that pride, that we collectively share priorities, the priority of equity and inclusion. That's the only reason I was able to get in the door this morning was because we collectively have that sense, and I wish for more along those lines, more inclusion going forward. And thank you all for joining me here.
I'm a little bit taller. Hi, everybody. My name's Abby. I serve as the lead minister here, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm a white woman with asymmetrical brown hair and a white robe and a purple stole that my mom made that I'm wearing today. So first I wanted to thank Carrie and Liam for planning and leading this service with me today. As Carrie said, one of the titles that we considered was Working Together While Frustrated, and for the gift of being willing to work together over the past few years, even amidst the frustration in all kinds of ways and pointed in all kinds of directions, certainly including at me with good reason, I am very grateful, and I offer that gratitude to you all who have continued to work together while frustrated as well. Who here is frustrated with the slow pace of change in the world? How about on Zoom? Yeah, double hands on Zoom. Who here is frustrated with the slow pace of change in this congregation? All of us. Who here is frustrated with the slow pace of change as we strive to become better people in our own hearts? I know I am. And so today we try to speak truth to the frustrating place that we're in right now and imagine together where we can go from here. And it feels important not to simply be held in that frustration, but also to be grounded in stories of how people, some of them not too different from us, have confronted seemingly insurmountable challenges, and together we're able to make their communities and the world more just and more accessible. So in addition to what Carrie and Liam shared, I wanted to share 3 stories of people who've done that before. The first story is of how activism from the American Coalition of Citizens with Disabilities gave teeth to the first federal civil rights protection for people with disabilities, which was known as Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. Does anyone know the story of Section 504? Some of you may. And if you've seen the movie Crip Camp, it tells a good part of the story of that as well. So in 1973, Section 504 was signed into law, essentially saying for the first time that no program that received federal funds, including transportation and education and other federal buildings, could discriminate against a person with a disability. It was the first time that we had said that as a country. But 4 years after that was signed into law, after watching little to no progress towards creating the actual regulations so that Section 504 could be enforced, activists rose up. And so on April 5th in 1977, some activists planned a rally and a sit-in outside of the federal building in San Francisco. The sit-in continued for 26 days, with up to, I think, 200 activists taking part in the sit-in at different times, struggling with difficult conditions, with lack of food and resources and places to take a shower, as they sought press coverage and meetings with decision makers, politicians. At the time, local churches and the Black Panther Party brought them meals and supplies, and a labor union helped transport a delegation of them to DC when it was clear that they needed to be in the nation's capital to continue that work. Eventually, through extensive discussions with governmental officials, through lots of powerful public demonstrations, these activists were pivotal in getting strong regulations for Section 504 signed. 504 activist Kitty Cohn writes, "For the first time, we had concrete federal civil rights protection. We had shown ourselves to the country through network TV that we, the most hidden, impoverished, pitied group of people in the nation, were capable of waging a deadly serious struggle that brought about profound social change. Those of us with disabilities were imbued with a new sense of pride and strength and community and confidence. And for maybe the first time, we understood that our isolation and segregation stemmed from societal policy, not from some personal defect that we had on our parts." Now, these activists were not well funded. They didn't have the levels of power and education and resources that the officials and the industries who were working to keep the Section 504 toothless had. They had none of what their opponents had. But what they did have was passion, a commitment to one another, the expertise of their own personal stories, and a coalition of people who fought for all kinds of justice working together. People fighting for racial justice and LGBTQ justice and labor justice all worked together in support of this particular civil rights fight for disability justice, working together for everyone's liberation. The other two stories I want to share are shorter, and they're stories of Unitarian Universalist congregations not too unlike ours. Congregations who had historic and inaccessible buildings like ours and who found a way to transform their homes to become accessible to all people. The first is the First Unitarian Church of Oakland, California, which is where I was serving before I came to be your minister 7 years ago. Their building was built almost the exact same year as ours, I think, at the very tail end of the 1800s. And like ours, it was once full of steps. But when they went through a renovation in the late 1990s, they completely reimagined their space. So not only did they build a ramp into their building, but they built one that was integrated into the architecture of the building, of the very front entrance. So they had a dignified and beautiful, accessible entrance right in front, not something tacked on. Not only did they install an elevator for all to be able to reach the upstairs spaces, they turned what was once a 2-story building with like soaring ceilings into a 3-story building with normal ceilings so that they could gain more accessible spaces for people to meet and for children to learn. Not only did it become possible to enter their sanctuary in a wheelchair, they built a ramp that wrapped around one side of their sanctuary. So equivalent, if we're thinking about our space, it's like building a ramp that goes all the way up the side and then into the chancel. I lost my spot. All the way up into the chancel, so that the people who used wheelchairs and other mobility devices in the congregation could not only come in to witness worship, but could be part of an equal part of the worship associate team, an equal part of the band, and their current minister is a scooter user themselves. So all of a sudden, not just the people, but the leadership also were able to lead in accessible spaces in that congregation. All Souls Unitarian Church in Washington, D.C. underwent a similar renovation in the past 10 years, where not only did their accessible entrance become more open, more architecturally integrated, more dignified than it was before, but they reconfigured their ground floor spaces to feel more open, inviting, and less like a maze. Anyone recognize the image of a maze in our congregation? To include more bathroom spaces for people of all genders and all needs, installed an elevator so that people could access not just the main floor, but also the rooms for smaller gatherings, and installed light wells into their dark basement spaces where most of the children's religious education happened, so that all people in the congregation had access to daylit and beautiful spaces throughout the building, not just on the first floor. So though our accessible entrance project has dragged on for 5 years, our expectation is that we'll be calling the ramp company to begin our order process in the coming week. Is that right? I'm looking at, okay. Yeah, I mean, that's gracious, everybody. It's been 5 years, but it is exciting. We're gonna call the ramp company and start the order this week. Once it can be installed and customized according to our designs, we will finally have the accessible entrance that we have been working toward for so long, and hopefully this is gonna be a quick timeline. And thanks to everybody who has been working on making that happen, despite how long it has been taking. But as we've said from the very beginning, the entrance is only the first part of our work. And so in the spring of this year, we are going to be visioning what the future of our spaces should look like in preparation for a large capital campaign and a renovation of the space that we are so aware that we need here as well. I hope many of you will participate in that process. I hope many of you will join in our session today after the service in the parish room. That's going to kickstart some of that conversation. We know that the pace of change is too slow. It is far, far too slow here, in our hearts, and in our larger society. And our frustration can sometimes hinder our imagination. Sometimes it can dull our hope. But the incredible feats of these other congregations and many more, and the incredible feats of the 504 activists to create more accessible and more just world were accomplished by people not too different from ourselves. People with passion and drive, people with a commitment to one another, people who knew how to work together for justice across identities, people whose imagination went beyond a Band-Aid fix to create transformation and justice and accessibility for all. Their story can be our story. Can I get an amen? Their story could be our story, my friends. They are not too different from us. They are not too different from us. In our Time for All Ages today, Carrie reminded us that one of us can speak up for justice, but when we speak up together, we create a world of possibility. May we speak up together, my friends. May it begin today, and may the world of possibility open before us. Amen. Blessed be.
Hi, I'm Reverend Hannah Capaldi.
And I'm Reverend Abby Tennis. We are the ministers at the First Unitarian Church of Philadelphia, where our mission is to awaken love and justice in our lives and in the world.
We're so grateful that you watched, and we hope that the sermon connected with your soul.
We also want to invite you to join us for a live worship service every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. You can always find the link to that service on our website at www.philauu.org. In these services, you'll hear words like you've just heard, And you also get a chance to greet one another, pray together, sing together. And we even hold a virtual coffee hour after services to get a chance to greet some new and old friends.
If you want to support the mission of this community and you feel moved to give, you can do so by going to the website that Reverend Abby just mentioned. You can find that link below, or you can text 215-709-5095 and follow the prompts to give.
If someone in your life needs to hear these words today, we encourage you to share this video. And again, thank you so much for watching.
We hope to see you soon.